So I came across this news from a site. For those of you who follow me, I've referenced them quite a few times recently. Drop Site News. I think they do amazing journalism, specifically covering the things that are happening in Gaza and the West Bank. They've also been covering extensively what's been going on with Israel, Iran, the United States, everything as far as that's concerned. They do have something here on Substack that I think you can follow. I recommend you do so. They put a lot of stuff out on Twitter/X though, and so I want to read you that right now because this is what I saw. They were referencing a report that came out of Haaretz. For those who are not familiar with this publication, is the oldest publication in the state of Israel. And I'm going to be honest with you, they do more thorough and more honest reporting than anything that comes out in America about what's happening in Gaza right now. Haaretz confirms that Israeli soldiers were ordered to fire on unarmed, starving civilians at aid sites. I'm going to read you a little bit here about what was coming out. This is a major investigation that Haaretz was done. They confirmed that Israeli soldiers in Gaza were ordered to shoot at unarmed Palestinians gathering near food distribution sites, even when they posed no threats. Soldiers were described the areas as killing fields, noting that there were no enemies and that there were no weapons. The IDF officers say that the killings were not isolated mistakes, but part of a pattern dubbed Operation Salted Fish, the Israeli version of red light, green light. When we shoot, they run, we shoot again, one soldier said. That is our communication. At least 549 Palestinians have been killed and over 4,000 have been wounded near these aid centers just since May 27th. This is according to Gaza's health ministry. Testimonies reveal Israeli commanders were instructed troops to open fire on civilians approaching aid sites before they opened or after they closed, using machine guns, mortars, and grenades. Soldiers described systemic live fire, including from tanks. One officer said that they fired to signal to the population that this is a combat zone. Soldiers reported casualties every day. Another soldier recalled being told to fire a shell at a crowd to send a message. This goes on, but one of the things that they say here at the bottom was that IDF officers told Haaretz that the army suppresses footage from these sites, believing that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is what they've called these aid sites that they set up, it helps preserve, quote unquote, international legitimacy for their war. So they believe by putting in these fake aid sites that it is helping them internationally maintain cover for what they are doing in Gaza. They are basically just trying to save face, but at the same time that they're doing this, they're also leveling people's homes. Israeli soldiers said that they have demolition crews on site that are often present at these aid sites and private contractors being paid to level homes nearby. One fighter said people are being killed so someone can knock down a home and get paid. So earlier, we had spoken about Zoran Mamdani and how he was criticizing the state of Israel, saying that there are two tiers of justice in this state and that the Israeli citizens have one set of laws and rights and that Palestinians have a different set of laws and rights. And he was saying that Israel should be a state where everyone has the same rights, has the same laws applied to them. And that what is happening to Gaza right now is horrendous. And I also want to applaud him because after all the attacks that he's receiving right now, he also posted this on his Twitter account earlier today. He posted this Haaretz article, Zohar Mamdani did. And he's also receiving criticisms from elected members of Congress calling him anti-Semitic for making these claims. Wow. Now, let's just sit with that for a second. These members of Congress, they're not isolated. They know what's happening in Gaza. They know what's happening in reports like this from the Haaretz report. So they know that Israel is carrying out these massacres. And they are still openly slandering and calling Zoran an anti-Semite for pointing out what's happening over there and saying that it should not be taking place. So let that just sink in for a second. Instead of just accurately calling what Israel is asking its military to do as an atrocity, as an actual genocide, they would rather slander and completely try to discredit somebody who's just speaking up on behalf of people who are civilians being killed right now by a foreign military. That is legitimately insane.
Yeah.
Point blank period. It's legitimately insane that they're trying to make that person seem to be the bad guy when what they are doing is insulating a country who is openly killing civilians, which is a war crime, which does violate international law, which should make them subject to sanctions and to actual military intervention, if not weapons embargoes and everything else. None of that's happening, but just even criticizing is considered to be beyond the pale. It's too much. You're taking the sides of the terrorists. I cannot describe to you just how disgusted I am listening to all of these different members of Congress, specifically Democrats, coming out and trying to attack Zoran Mamdani for accurately saying that this is atrocious and it needs to stop.
Yeah. I have a friend who is Jewish, and her parents are, she was raised Jewish, and she's very much pro-Palestinian, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of the younger generation understands this issue from a different lens and a different perspective. But her parents, are self-proclaimed Zionists, and she told me they had a big argument the other night, and her stepmother was crying and saying, how could you support Hamas? How could you support Hamas? And it always just goes back to this idea that anytime you stand up for the Palestinian people, as a Jew, she's a Jewish person standing up in support of their right to exist. There's this rhetoric of, well, then you must care, you must be taking the side of terrorists. And I think what happens when you do this over and over again, and the same thing that happened with Mamdani, is all of these words start to lose their meaning. What does it mean to be an anti-Semite if you're calling other Jewish people anti-Semitic who are simply standing up for people's human rights? I mean, there were Holocaust survivors saying that Israel is committing a genocide. Holocaust survivors. So to me, there's a real grasping at straws to try to control the narrative, which we know in media is the thing that you have to do. You have to take control of the messaging. And the message continues to be beat into them that anybody who stands against Israel for these atrocious crimes against humanity is what they are. These go, in my mind, they're beyond war crimes. These are crimes against us in the collective sense, as people, as beings on this planet. I mean, it's so deep. Then you must be either a terrorist or a terrorist sympathizer. And I think that is where, to me, the argument for them all falls apart, because it's not rooted in reality. It's rooted in rhetoric, and it's rooted in spin. And if that's the only thing you can say, it's no better than people saying, well, Joe Biden was a communist. Like, it doesn't mean anything, it's meaningless. And so when you actually hear from, like you said, the oldest publication from that part of the world speaking very plainly about what is happening, it is time to sit down and listen to what people are trying to say, which is they just want the carnage to stop. I can't even fathom the idea if I was starving and my homeland was being destroyed and my children were missing limbs or murdered in front of me, and there was aid set up, and I'm walking to get food, and I see the guy next to me get shot, and so I run. Like, I can't even imagine the feeling of that. And so the idea that we're continuing to try to silence people who are standing up for those right now who cannot speak for themselves it's a sign that we have lost our way, and we've lost our sense of dignity as people. And I think it is a shame that it has gotten to this level, because I think there was a breakdown in communication months, if not years ago, around this topic. But now that more people have become aware of what is going on, and they're less able to spin and hide it, it's going to be interesting to me to see how Israel continues to try to play their role in this, when at the end of the day, I think there is a real reckoning here of their responsibility in all of this. And I don't hear a lot of that accountability coming from their government at all. I hear a lot of my friends who are Jewish speaking about what those responsibilities need to look like from the Israeli government, but I don't hear the government talking about it. And that is very concerning to me, because you cannot wipe the blood off of your hands at this point. You just can't do it.
No, and I think a lot of times people here in America, they'll ask themselves the question of, what can we do about this? And this is something that I think some people are really familiar with, some people may not be. So I'm going to be speaking for the people who may not be as familiar with it right now. We supply 2/3 of the weapons to the state of Israel. I think 30% roughly comes from Germany. We give them mostly the rest. Almost nobody else is sending them weapons right now. We also give them a military protection. And saying that if anyone tries to attack you, we will be there to defend you. Right now, they are surrounded by countries that they have attacked or that they have threatened. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Turkey. Erdogan does not like them. Egypt has had issues with them in the past, although they seem a little more friendly now. My point is that Israel relies heavily on our guarantee of protection. If they did not have it, then they would be subject to basically annihilation. Like it is almost undeniable that if the United States said we are done protecting you, that Israel would probably not exist within a week. I mean, I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic about that, but that is the degree of protection that we offer them. And so with that being said, with that amount of leverage that the American government has over the state of Israel, if any president, if Donald Trump wanted to call Benjamin Netanyahu tomorrow and say, I'm going to rescind all protection of Israel unless you stop what you're doing in Gaza, it would end because they would know that they could not survive without our protection. This was the same thing that people were saying on the left about Joe Biden last year and in 2023. That's essentially what the big protests were about. Yeah. We're trying to get Biden to use his influence to pressure Benjamin Netanyahu to stop because everyone knew that the president of the United States could basically do that in one phone call and it would be done. Yeah. It would be done. And it never happened. Joe Biden did not do it. Donald Trump has not done it. And that is the most, I think, agonizing part about all of this, is that the president of the United States could make one phone call and this could be over. And it hasn't happened. And I think that it's something that I want people to remember, is that, like, why we are focusing on this so heavily, because I do believe that there is a scenario where enough just pressure could be put on the American president that they would be forced to make that phone call. And I think that we have to keep having these conversations until we can kind of create that groundswell.
I agree. My concern is with this regime, I mean, I don't see it happening because, you had mentioned briefly when you were talking around the idea of it being about this land grab. And yeah. I know a lot of us, the news cycle moves so fast, it's hard to remember all of the things, but it wasn't that long ago when there was that generative AI video that came out that showed sort of Gaza as this beautiful beachfront property. And there was the fake, the gold statue of Trump, and Musk was there, and it was this whole scenario. And we know, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is actively involved in trying to transform that land to their benefit. And I think at the end of the day, once again, this is all about connecting ideas and systems. And so if we look at capitalism run amok, it only makes sense that it would lead to the displacement and the genocide and the ethnic cleansing of people if suddenly people want that land that's going to potentially create a ton of a ton of money for them. And so I think we've got to also be looking at these systems of inequity more closely and why we're allowing so much money to be concentrated in so few hands, because at the end of the day, a few people shouldn't really be able to decide that they want to just take over an entire area of the world and reimagine it to their liking. People there be damned, right? So it goes, I think, beyond the moment. And if we really want to acknowledge that this cannot continue, then we also cannot continue having billionaire classes. And so those things have to be addressed and acknowledged in a real way. And I don't know if that's a conversation people, they seem to want to have it, but no one really has any ideas of how we would truly end a billionaire class and what that would look like. But I do think if we started redistributing wealth in a real way, we wouldn't be able to have this level of abuse happen, because outside of governments, it's a lot of private equity and investment that's funneling money into super PACs, that's funneling some of this so that they can get their people elected in order to continue doing what they want to do for their bottom line. And I know that sounds cold and calculated, but that's what it is. I think these people are cold and calculated.
There is reports coming out right now that Trump is working on a ceasefire deal. I'll always believe it when I see it. But I do think that he is motivated right now because he's been seeing his internal polling drop off a cliff, especially after last week with the strikes on Iran. So that could be down the pipe, but we will kind of give you some more updates on that as that comes along. And again, I don't think that any kind of ceasefire that might happen between Israel and Gaza that Trump is trying to negotiate right now is actually him trying to be altruistic. I think this is just him reading the tea leaves that his own base is revolting against him. He did sell himself as an anti-war president, even though there is no evidence, even remotely, about him being anti-war. I'll save you the speech right now, but it is a long list of warmongering practices that Donald Trump has put forth, not just in this term, but in his first term as well. So, I mean, gross fearmonger Donald Trump is, but he also understands when he's unpopular with his own people. So that might be a deal that gets brokered just for him to save face with his own people. So we will kind of see where that goes. But Natalie, I want to thank you for having this conversation with me. We covered quite a few different topics today. There's still so many more things that we didn't get a chance to talk about because there's just so many things happening in the news right now. Again, I want to reiterate the fact that the Supreme Court rulings that dropped today, didn't get a chance to really cover them because we kind of picked our topics yesterday, but definitely want to talk about the Supreme Court and the horrendous things that they have done just today. So we will have to circle back to that. For those who have not already, you can click the top of the screen right now. You can subscribe to Natalie's Substack. I recommend that you do. Become a paid member. She's a great journalist. Everyone should be over on Facts Over Fear. If you're watching the playback right now, there'll be some links in the episode description. You can follow us on Instagram, on TikTok, our Substacks. We'll be back next week. I believe next Friday, but to TBD. We will let you all know.
Yeah, I hope so. Yes. That all sounds great.
Thank you so much, Natalie.
No, absolutely. It's always great being with you, Desmond. And thanks to everybody who joined us. The news is happening faster than we can honestly report on it. So please pace yourselves and try to reflect and take some self-care because we need everybody involved doing whatever they can to fight fascism in all its forms. And that also means taking care of yourself. So until next time, then, take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks, everybody. Mental health matters.
See you next time.
Bye.